Hello to all of you, my lovely students in the 10th grade. How are you today? Welcome back to my English lessons. It's me, your English teacher, Iman Al-Jafari at Ru Al-Faruq Academy. In our lesson today, we are going to start with some activities that you have in your student book, page 20. So in this lesson, you are going to answer some WH word questions related to the text, read some phrases and decide if they are formal or informal. You are going to discuss what is the same and what is different in the two forms of letter. They are excellent, the formal and informal letters. Before doing the first activity, let's revise our information about the two types of letters that you have read in your student book. The first one was a formal letter that was written by Tasha Sims to excellent to Professor Burns. Here we have Tasha's address on the top right and Professor Burns' address on the top left. Under her address we have excellent the date. Under his address we have the greeting. She wrote, Dear Professor Burns, so she used his title, Professor. In her introduction, she wants to thank Professor Burns for allowing the students to reproduce the photos of his ancient British treasure trove. She also wants to ask him if he would like to contribute in the next festival. How does Tasha end her letter? Excellent. She used yours sincerely. Go to the second type of letter. It is informal letter. It was written by excellent Todd to Lee. On the top right here we have Todd's address. Under his address we have the date. Todd starts the letter with, yes, the first name of the recipient. He doesn't use his title, Dear Lee. In this letter, Todd wants to tell Lee about the DVD that was launched in the festival. He also wants to thank Lee's father for sponsoring the fireworks. How does Todd end the letter? He says best wishes. So here we have an informal expression. And now let's start with the first activity that you have in your student book, page 20. Answer these questions. The first one, where does Tasha live? Go to the first letter. On the top right, we have her address. She lives in, excellent, 3 and 14 Ocean Avenue, apartment 109, Bay City. Number 2, where does Professor Burns teach? Go to the same letter. On the top left, we have his address, the place where he works in. He works in the University of the North. What photos did Professor Burns allow the students to include in the DVD? He allowed the students to include the photos of the ancient British treasure trove. What do the students want the second festival to be like compared to the first one? Tasha said that we want the next festival to be excellent, bigger and better than the first one. So they want the next festival to be bigger and better. What special interest does Professor Burns have? Professor Burns is interested in excellent early forms of writing. Where did Todd send the letter to Lee? As I told you, Lee is now in a field trip. When he returned back from his field trip to the base camp, he will be able to read the letter. So Todd sent the letter to excellent the Panda Conservation Base Camp. Where does Todd expect Lee to use, or what does Todd expect Lee to use to look at the DVD? He asked him to use excellent the laptop. How does Todd describe Lucy's photos of fireworks? Do you remember the simile that we have in the second letter? They describe the fireworks as if a giant hand has scattered fistfuls of color in the sky. So, again, the fireworks were as a giant hand, إيد عملاقة, has scattered fistfuls of colored lights across the sky. بعثرت ألوان أو أضواء ملونة في السماء. What has Todd become very interested in? He is interested in excellent pyrotechnics. The last question, what calligraphers are the students hoping will be at the next festival? They want to ask many calligraphers, خطاطين, to come to the festival from all over the world, such as we have Chinese calligraphers, who is Lee's father. What else? We have Arabic, Georgian, Japanese, and Thai calligraphers. Okay? And now let's start with the second activity. Read the phrases and write formal or informal. Check the letters on pages 18 and 19. Here we have some phrases from the first and the second letters. You are going to decide whether these phrases are formal or informal. If the phrase is informal, you are going to use I. If the phrase is formal, you are going to use the letter F. Okay, so let's start with the first one. We are keen to organize. Notice here we have the long form, we are. We didn't use the contraction form, not we are. So it is a formal expression. We decided to take the plunge. Here we have an informal phrase. When we do something that is difficult or something that is challenging, we can use we decided to take the plunge. So it is an informal expression. When Todd told Lee that we have decided to take the plunge, which is the next festival. I would like to ask you, instead of using I'd like, I would like, we use the long form. إذا استخدمنا long form بدون اختصار يا عاشر, إذا بيكون التعبير formal. So it is formal. I would like to ask you if, it is a formal expression that is used in the formal letter. We understand that you have, instead of you've, we use you have. So it is used in the formal letter. Could you let us know? It is a formal expression. Since the summer, by the way, when we use the expression by the way, so it is excellent informal expression. Should you feel able to respond? Here we have more polite requests. يعني هون طلب بطريقة مؤدبة. Instead of saying if you feel able to respond, we use should you feel able to respond. So it is a formal expression. I'd like to know. كونك هون استخدمت instead of I would like, I'd like, so it is informal, or it is used in informal letter. I know you've always wanted. Here we have you've instead of you have, so it is informal expression. Which I hope you will find. Instead of you'll, we use you will, so it is a long form. It is used in the formal letter. We would also like to ask you if. We would instead of we'd, so it is formal. Yes, formal expression that is used in the formal letter. I've enclosed you free copy. So it is, here we have the contraction form of have, so it is informal expression, okay? And now let's start with the third activity, discuss what is the same and what is different in the form of the two letters. In this activity, you are going to compare between formal letters and informal letters. According to the first one, the sender address, عنوان المرسل. In the first letter, the sender was Tasha. The second one was, he was Todd. So where do we have the sender's address in both letters? We have, excellent, we have the sender address on the top right of the letter. So the sender's address is always on the top right of the letter whether it is formal or informal. يعني عنوان المرسل بيكون يمس في أعلى اليمين سواء كانت الرسالة رسمية أو غير رسمية. What about the date? Where do we have the date? Excellent. We have the date is under the sender's address. تحت عنوان المرسل عطول حكيت لك بكون في التاريخ. Okay? What about the recipient's address? Where do we have the recipient address? Do we have the recipient's address in the formal letter? Yes, it is on the top left. But in the informal letter, we don't have the recipient's address. يعني هون في اختلاف مش تشابه. النقطة الأولى والثانية كان في تشابه، هون في اختلاف. الرسالة الرسمية فيها عنوان المرسل إليه بيكون في الجهة أعلى اليسار. أما في الرسالة الغير رسمية ما في عنا عنوان المرسل إليه. So, only formal letter includes the recipient's address where we have the recipient's address on the top left. Okay? The greeting الترحيب كيف نفتتح الرسالة. So, in formal letter we use the recipient's title. What do you mean by the recipient's title? نستخدم لقبه Mr. Professor. But the informal letter we use the first name. متذكرين informal letter Dear لي عطول استخدمنا اسمه الأول بدون لقب. What about the body of the letter? What do you mean by the body of the letter? How was the letter divided? كيف تقسمت letters? As I told you, in formal letter, the letter is divided into paragraphs. بتكون الرسالة مقسمة إلى فقرات واضحة. But in informal letter, we don't have paragraphs. So, the formal letter is divided into paragraphs. The informal letter isn't divided into paragraphs. The last one, how do we end the letter? How can you end the letter? In the formal letter ends with your sincerely or your faithfully. حكينا رسالتك الرسمية بتنهيها either your sincerely if you know the name of the recipient. If you don't know the name of the recipient, you end your letter with your faithfully. The informal letter ends with any informal expression that you like. Goodbye, see you soon, best wishes. So these are the main differences between the formal and informal letter. I will stop here today. In our next lesson, we are going to start with the activities that you have in your workbook. So thank you again for listening to me.